rain came without warning, an unrelenting curtain of silver thread slicing through the night. Sarah Bennett gripped the steering wheel as she navigated the narrow road into Willow Creek, Vermont. Headlights cut through the downpour, illuminating twisted pines and slick asphalt. Her friend Mike sat beside her, camera in hand, eyes wide with equal parts excitement and dread. "I've never seen weather like this," Mike muttered, voice barely audible over the wipers. Sarah exhaled slowly. Perfect for ghost stories. They had driven 6 hours from Boston to spend one night at the old Maplewood Inn, an abandoned lodging house rumored to be haunted. As a travel blogger chasing legends, Sarah had felt a thrill at the idea. But now, as thunder rumbled low and the trees seemed to lean closer, she wondered if thrill was the right word. Up ahead, a crooked sign swung on rusty hinges. Maplewood Inn. Est 1887. The inn silhouette emerged from the rain, 3 stories of peeling white paint, narrow windows like dark, unblinking eyes. A single porch light flickered, casting long shadows across the wet boards. They parked and climbed out, rain immediately soaking their jackets. Mike snapped a photo of the sign. "Look at those shingles, half missing." Sarah nodded, flashlight in hand. "The owner says the place hasn't been lived in for decades. Then why is that light on?" Mike asked. She swallowed. "Who knows?" The front door was cracked open. A gust of wind slammed it fully, as if inviting or warning them inside. Sarah pushed it back, the hinges protesting with a high-pitched squeal. Inside, the air was cold, colder than the rain. Their flashlights pierced the gloom, revealing a foyer lined with dusty wallpaper, once ornate, now yellowed and peeling. A grand staircase rose before them, its banister warped by time. To the left, a reception desk lay in ruin. Ledger books scattered, a tarnished bell, cobwebs thick as curtains. "Hello?" Sarah called, voice echoing. No answer. Mike edged forward, camera clicking. "Look at this." He knelt beside a ledger, open to a page dated 1924. Guest number 32, Margaret Hawthorne, departed abruptly, room 7. No explanation. Sarah read the faded script. Margaret Hawthorne, room 7. A distant sound made them both freeze. Soft footsteps on upstairs floorboards. "Someone's here," Mike whispered. Sarah's heart pounded. Probably an urban explorer or a caretaker. She rose and aimed her light up the staircase. The steps disappeared into darkness. Thunder boomed overhead. "Let's check it out," Mike said, already ascending. Sarah hesitated. The air felt heavier with each step, as if the house itself watched. But she followed, camera swinging at her side. On the second floor, the hallway stretched long and narrow, doors on either side. Their beams of light danced across faded numbers. 4, 5, 6. They stopped before 7. The door hung open a crack. "Room 7, Sarah whispered. Mike pushed gently. The door swung wide. Inside was a small chamber, a single bed with a tattered quilt, a wooden wardrobe, and a cracked mirror above a dresser. The floor was littered with old newspapers, their headlines screaming of missing persons, fires, drownings, all from the 1920s. Sarah shivered. This must have been Margaret's room. Mike shone his light across the mirror. For a moment, they saw only their reflections, pale faces, wide eyes. Then the glass rippled like water disturbed by a drop. Sarah gasped. Mike's camera stuttered as he snapped a photo. The mirror's surface shimmered, and behind them, in the reflection only, stood a woman in a faded white dress, long dark hair, face turned away. "Did you see that?" Mike hissed. Sarah didn't answer. She stared at the mirror. The woman lifted her head slowly. Her eyes, empty black pits, met Sarah's. A silent scream parted her lips. The lights flickered. The door slammed shut. Mike lunged for the handle. Locked. Sarah backed away, heart racing. The woman in the mirror reached out, hand pressed against the glass, slowly, deliberately, leaving a streak of mist. Sarah raised her voice, trembling. "We need to get out. Now!" Mike pounded on the door. "It's stuck!" The woman's mouth opened wider in the reflection, a void of darkness. Then, with a final echoing crack, the mirror shattered inward, shards raining down. Sarah dove aside. Mike covered his face as splinters scattered. In the jagged remains, their reflections flickered one last time. Empty frames where faces should have been. Silence. A whisper drifted on the stale air. "Leave before." Footsteps pounded overhead, running, frantic. Sarah grabbed Mike's arm. "This place is alive." He nodded, eyes wild. "Let's go." They fled room 7 down the hallway, past the staircase to find the foyer empty, the front door closed and locked from the outside. Rain pattered against the windows, the porch light winked out, and somewhere, deep within Maplewood Inn, a door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Sarah's heart pounded as she yanked at the locked front door. Rain spattered against the windows, relentless, mocking. Mike's flashlight bobbed wildly. No windows open, he panted, testing each sash, all nailed shut. They backed into the foyer. The reception desk sat in ruins, ledger pages fluttering in a sudden draft. From somewhere above came a low creak, as though the house itself were settling or shifting. Sarah swallowed hard. We need another way out. She noticed a narrow stairwell beside the desk, descending into darkness. Basement? Mike hesitated. Could be worse down there. Sarah squared her shoulders. Better than being trapped here. They climbed down. The steps smelled of mildew and rot. At the bottom, the beam of Sarah's flashlight revealed a corridor lined with peeling paint. A single bare bulb flickered overhead. Shadows danced on the walls. Over here, Mike whispered, pointing to a door marked Manager's Office. The glass pane was cracked, letters faded. Sarah pushed it open. Inside was a cramped office, a battered desk, filing cabinets, and a corkboard cluttered with yellow newspaper clippings. One headline caught Sarah's eye. Maplewood Inn Fire, 1925. Beneath it, a photograph of a pale woman in a white dress, Margaret Hawthorne. Her eyes, dark and hollow in the black and white print, seemed to follow Sarah. Mike rifled through drawers. Here, guest files. He pulled out a leather binder stamped 1920 to 1930. Flipping pages, he found Margaret's entry. Margaret Hawthorne, checked in April 10, 1924. Found dead in room 7. Burned in fire of March 2nd, 1925. Breath hitched. She died here and stayed. A soft whisper drifted through the cracked doorframe. Stay. They froze. The bulb overhead buzzed and dimmed. Mike swallowed. We should go now. Sarah nodded, closing the binder. But as they turned, the office door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The lock clicked. Mike jerked at the handle. It's locked too. A sudden scratch, fingernails on wood, echoed from the hallway. Sarah pressed against the desk, eyes wide. The whisper came again, closer this time. Come back. Sarah raised her flashlight. The beam landed on the corkboard. More photos, guests with terrified faces scribbled notes. He comes at midnight. Don't answer the phone. We never left. Mike's voice trembled. This place, it feeds on them. They heard slow footsteps in the corridor, each step deliberate, measured. Sarah found a side window, small, barred, too high. She glanced at Mike. Help me move the desk. Together they shoved the desk beneath the window. It scraped across the floorboards, leaving black streaks. Mike climbed up, hands shaking, and peered out. Backyard, he whispered. Overgrown, but no bars. Sarah climbed after him. Her fingers brushed the glass. It was intact. Below the yard was a tangle of weeds, rain-slicked stones, and the dark silhouette of the inn's collapsed servant's wing. Freedom lay beyond, if they could break the window. A sudden crack behind them made both whirl around. The office door lay open, slowly swinging. The hallway beyond was pitch black. They hesitated. Then Mike whispered, "Let's go." They dropped to the floor and ran through the door. The corridor stretched impossibly long, far longer than on the way down. Doors lined each side, numbers peeling away. At the far end, a faint glow pulsed. Sarah's pulse thundered. What is that? Mike shone his light forward. The glow came from a telephone booth, the only one in the corridor, its receiver hanging off the hook. A red light blinked on its cradle. A chill gripped Sarah's spine. The note said, "Don't answer the phone." Mike lifted the receiver. The line crackled. A voice, Margaret's, whispered, broken and desperate. "Help me, I'm still here." Mike's hand froze. The booth light went dark. In that instant, the corridor behind them closed, doors sealing themselves with a metallic clang. The glow vanished. Sarah grabbed Mike's arm. "We're not alone." They backed away, breath ragged, as the walls around them seemed to pulse with silent heartbeat. From every door came a soft tapping, fingernails tracing patterns on wood. Sarah swallowed. "We have to keep moving, toward the backyard." Mike nodded, voice trembling. "And don't answer anything else." They pressed on, every step echoing in the living, breathing house, chasing the promise of escape and praying they weren't too late. They stepped out of the booth into darkness. The corridor's walls seemed to breathe, paint bubbling, wood groaning. Every door along the hall stood closed, yet behind each one came a faint, rhythmic tapping, as if dozens of ghostly fingers traced the grain. Sarah swallowed hard. We need to move. Mike nodded, voice low. Follow me. He pointed down a side passage that branched off to the left. The glow of the barred window in the office yard beckoned at the far end. With every step, the tapping grew louder, staccato beats like a funeral drum. Halfway down the passage, Sarah's flashlight beam caught a shape in a cracked door window. A pale handprint pressed against the glass, fingernails splayed. She froze. Keep going, Mike hissed, tugging her sleeve. They hurried on. The tapping turned into scratching, then into whispers. The words were indistinct, fragments of sentences that made Sarah's blood run cold. Don't leave. Stay with me. Cold. So cold. Can't escape. At the end of the passage, a heavy steel door blocked their path. Above it, a rusted sign read, Servant's Wing. Mike pushed against it. It swung inward, revealing a stairwell spiraling upward. They ascended. The steps narrowed, the air grew warmer. Somewhere above, a child's laughter tinkled, a lullaby sung off-key. Sarah covered her ears. At the top, they burst into a long room lined with shuttered windows. The shutters were intact, but one had been pried open from the outside. Moonlight spilled in, illuminating peeling floral wallpaper and a scattering of overturned chairs. Sarah exhaled. The backyard. She ran to the window. Below, the yard lay tangled in weeds and rotting wood. The servant's wing had collapsed years ago. Only a low stone wall separated it from the overgrown lot. If they could climb down, Mike caught her arm. Wait. He pointed to the far end of the room, where a single door stood ajar. Through it, candlelight flickered. Sarah's heart hammered. Who? Before she could finish, a shape darted past the door's threshold. Mike lifted his flashlight. The beam landed on a woman in a white dress. Margaret Hawthorne herself. She drifted between the shadows, hair matted, eyes empty. She raised one arm and pointed deeper into the servant's wing. Help, her voice echoed, distant and hollow. Sarah swallowed. She wants us to follow. They crossed the room. Each step echoed on the warped floorboards. The candlelight grew brighter. As they reached the door, Mike's light revealed a corridor lined with old portraits, guests and staff, all gazing with mournful eyes. Beneath each frame a name and date, 1892, 1910, 1924. At the end of the corridor lay a stone archway carved with a single word, Remember. The candles flickered at its base as if marking a shrine. Margaret stood beside it, pointing at the inscription, her mouth opened in a silent plea. Sarah's throat tightened. Remember what? A gust of wind snuffed the candles. The portrait's eyes glowed faintly. Whispers swelled into a roar. Remember me? Remember us. Sarah stepped under the arch. The world shifted. The corridor dissolved into blackness, and they found themselves back in room 7, mirror shards scattered across the floor. The bed sat neatly made, the cracked mirror frame empty. Mike's flashlight danced over the dresser. On it lay a single page from the ledger. April 10, 1924. Margaret Hawthorne found crying by the mirror, claims she sees them, demands release. Sarah picked it up, voice trembling. She's been trapped, pleading for someone to remember. A soft sob echoed behind them. They spun around to see Margaret's reflection in the empty mirror frame, her form half visible, lips moving in silent sorrow. The door behind them slammed shut. The mirror frame creaked, and suddenly a dozen ghostly faces pressed against the glass. Margaret's fellow victims, trapped in the reflection. Their eyes begged for release. Sarah felt tears sting her cheeks. We have to help them. Mike nodded. There must be a way to free them. An old ritual, maybe in the basement. The room began to tilt. Dust swirled. The faces in the mirror opened their mouths in silent screams. Sarah gripped Mike's arm. To the basement, now! They raced for the door, but the hallway beyond had vanished. In its place, a solid wall of wood and plaster. The tapping returned, urgent, insistent, calling them back. Sarah drew in a shaky breath. Then we go through the mirror. She stepped toward the broken frame. The faces pressed closer, urging her forward. Mike hesitated but followed. Together they crossed the threshold and plunged into darkness. Darkness swallowed them. One moment Sarah and Mike stood before the broken mirror frame. The next, they tumbled forward. into a world of fractured reflections. Sarah gasped, scrambling to her feet. The air was thick and cold, like liquid night. Shapes shifted at the edge of her vision, shards of mirrors suspended in midair, each reflecting a different fragment of the inn. The foyer, the nursery, the ballroom, but all were warped, twisted. Mike crouched beside her, voice a whisper. Where are we? She shone her flashlight. Its beam fractured against the floating shards, scattering light like dying fireflies. I don't know, but it's the end somehow. They stepped forward. The floor beneath them was glass, cracked and webbed like a spider's web. Each step sent tremors through the mirror world. A low hum rose all around, a chorus of distant voices, half-formed words. Remember, release, mercy. Sarah's pulse quickened. This is their prison. Mike swallowed. We need to find the heart of this place. They moved between the shards, passing through reflections of rooms they'd seen, now empty, silent, yet alive with dread. In the nursery shard, the rocking horse tipped on its own. In the ballroom shard, a phantom piano key depressed, striking a single discordant note. At the center of this maze stood a tall obelisk of black glass. Etched into it were the runes Sarah had seen in the cellar. Only here they glowed with an inner red light. Beneath them, in silver script, a single word, relinquish. Sarah approached, heart hammering. She reached out, and her hand passed through the glass as if it were water. She felt a ripple of cold pain. Pulling back, she saw her fingertip bleed, the droplet vanishing before it could fall. Mike joined her side. The obelisk, it's the key. A whisper, soft, pleading, wafted through the shards. Free us. Sarah looked around. Each floating mirror shard held the face of a trapped soul. Margaret's, the Harrow family, the guests who never left. Their eyes glistened with hope and terror. We have to break it, she said, voice firm. Shatter this obelisk. Mike nodded. He lifted his camera tripod, heavy metal, and swung it against the glass. The obelisk's surface shivered but did not crack. Instead, the runes flared brighter, and the hum deepened into a roar. A wind rose in the mirror world, swirling shards around them. Voices screamed. Sarah grabbed Mike's arm. The ritual, we need words. She rifled through her pocket and pulled out the ledger page, Margaret's note. I'm still here. Demands release. And the torn journal fragment Mike had taken from the manager's office, an incantation in shaky script. Together they recited the words, voices rising above the roar. By fractured glass and shattered past, I call the lost to freedom's grasp. Through blood and will I break this bind. Let souls unchain and peace now find. With the last syllable, Sarah pressed the journal fragment against the obelisk's runes. The red glow surged, then exploded in a burst of light so bright it blinded them. They fell backward as the glass shards around them rattled like mad insects. A thunderous crack echoed, and the obelisk split down the middle, its two halves collapsing into dust. Silence. The mirror world trembled, then dissolved. Sarah and Mike tumbled out, landing on cold stone. They lay in the inn's basement, near the old altar. The real obelisk was gone. The runes on the floor were dark. Above them, the trapdoor groaned open. Moonlight spilled in. The hum was gone. Even the dripping water had ceased. Mike sat up, breathless. Did we do it? Sarah rose, brushing dust from her clothes. She held out her hand. No bleeding. Only the faintest glow of runes on her palm, now fading. A soft breeze stirred the candles around the altar. One by one, they flickered and died. Footsteps approached overhead. Sarah glanced at Mike. Let's get out of here. They climbed the stairs. In the foyer, the front door stood ajar, rain seeping through. Outside, the storm had passed. The sky was starless but quiet. Sarah paused at the threshold. The inn loomed behind her, silent, empty, finally at rest. She exhaled. It's over. Mike nodded, eyes on the broken shards of mirror lying on the floor. They're free. As they walked away, Sarah felt a soft breeze at her back and a distant whisper on the wind. Thank you. They didn't look back. Sarah's boots crunched on gravel as she and Mike reached their car, the night's chill finally seeping in through their soaked clothes. Above them, the inn loomed like a slumbering beast, silent, motionless, its secrets laid bare. Mike fumbled for his keys. I still can't believe we made it out. Sarah nodded, though her eyes kept drifting back to the dark windows of Maplewood. We freed them, all of them. He climbed in and started the engine. The headlights carved two pale beams into the fog. Sarah sank into the passenger seat, exhaustion heavy in her bones. She closed her eyes for a moment, just to feel normal again. But when she opened them, Mike's hand hovered over the radio dial. He glanced at her. You okay? She hesitated. I think so. He turned the dial anyway. The static crackled, then a familiar, scratchy voice came through. Help me. I'm still here. Sarah's blood ran cold. She sat up, heart hammering. Mike's hand jerked, nearly hitting the steering wheel. Turn it off, she hissed. He slammed the dial back. Silence. But in that silence, she could still hear the echo. Help me. Did you hear it? Sarah's voice was tight. Mike swallowed. Yeah. They sat for a long moment in the dark car, rain tapping on the roof. Finally, Mike reached over and turned the engine back on. The headlights cut through the mist. Let's get out of here, he said quietly. They drove in silence, the road stretching endless beneath the rain. When they reached the highway, Sarah flicked on her high beams, dispelling the fog. Yet in her mind, the mirror world's darkness still clung. Back in Boston, Sarah peeled off her wet jacket and collapsed onto her sofa. The room was warm, safe, everyday normal. She stared at her reflection in the window pane. For an instant, she thought she saw Margaret's hollow eyes staring back. She blinked. It was just her own face, pale, tired, but alive. Mike sat across from her, sipping coffee. You sure you're okay? She forced a smile. I'm fine. He hesitated. What about the shard? Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out the small fragment of black glass, the only remnant of the obelisk. It lay in her palm, cold and inert. The runes were gone. She traced its smooth edge. It's over. Mike leaned forward. We should bury it or throw it away. She nodded. Tomorrow. That night, Sarah dreamed of mirror shards. They floated around her in a vast, silent hall. She tried to scream, but no sound came. The shards reflected fragments of her life, her childhood bedroom, her mother's smile, the Maplewood foyer. Then the shards began to crack, splintering outward, and from each crack came a whisper. Soon, soon. She bolted upright, gasping. The room was dark, the only light the city glowed through her curtains. Her heart pounded. She glanced at her nightstand. Her phone lay face down. She reached for it and froze. On the screen in shaky handwriting was a single message. Thank you. Sarah's breath caught. She flicked the phone over. The inbox was empty. No messages, no missed calls. Morning brought uneasy calm. Sarah called Mike, and they met at a coffee shop. Neither spoke of the message. They sat across from each other, nursing lattes. Finally, Mike broke the silence. We should go back. She stared at him. Back to Maplewood? He nodded, just to make sure. Sarah's stomach twisted. You really think something's left? Mike reached across the table. I don't know, but I heard Margaret's voice and the message. She exhaled slowly. Okay. That night, they parked before the boarded-up Maplewood Inn. The windows were shuttered, the door sealed with new planks and fresh nails. No flickering lights, no whispers, just the hush of the wind through dead trees. Sarah stepped out, the shard heavy in her pocket. She approached the boards, hand trembling as she touched the wood. Mike held a crowbar. Ready? He asked. She nodded. Let's finish this. He pried loose a plank. Sarah slipped inside. The foyer was unchanged, dust settled, lanterns cold, yet the air felt different, charged, expectant. Mike followed. Where now? Sarah closed her eyes, listening. A soft hum from upstairs. Room 7? Mike whispered. She met his gaze. We go together. They climbed the grand staircase. With each step, the hum grew louder, an almost musical resonance, like wind through glass. At the top, they reached room 7. The door stood closed. Sarah's hand hovered on the knob. The hum swelled into a voice, a chorus of grateful sighs. Thank you for remembering us. She turned the knob. Inside, the room was empty. No mirror, no shards, no bed, just a single black leaf lying on the floor. Sarah knelt and picked it up. Its veins glowed faintly red. Mike shone his light on the walls. Suddenly, names appeared, etched in mist. Margaret Hawthorne, the Harrow family, guest number 132, and dozens more. Sarah's breath caught, the leaf pulsed in her hand. She understood they were not done. She looked at Mike, voice steady. We keep going. We remember them all. He nodded, determination in his eyes. Together they stepped into the empty room, the door closing softly behind them, and the whispers rose once more. Soon, we will be free. Sarah's breath caught as the door clicked shut behind them. The single black leaf in her palm pulsed, warm, alive. Mike's flashlight revealed names etched in mist on the wallpaper, drifting like vapor. Margaret Hawthorne, guest number 132, and dozens more. A hush fell. Then, softly, the voices rose again. Soon, we will be free. Sarah swallowed. We have to call them by name, she whispered, one by one. Mike nodded. Like Margaret said, remember, they moved along the walls. Sarah placed her palm over Margaret Hawthorne, voice low. Margaret Hawthorne, you are remembered. The mist coalesced, forming a pale shape in the corner, a woman in a faded dress, hair tangled. She lifted a hand, eyes full of gratitude, then faded into a swirl of mist that drifted toward the leaf. The leaf glowed brighter. Mike pointed. Next. He read the next name, the Harrow family. Sarah spoke for them. Father, mother, 2 children, each name uttered with care. As she finished, 4 ghostly figures stepped from the walls. Sorrowful faces pressed to one another, then drifting away, joining Margaret's mist. The leaf's glow pulsed faster. They pressed on, calling out names, watching spirits emerge, thanking them, letting them go. A hush grew, then a soft wind. The room trembled. Then, at the far wall, a single name remained, etched in deeper, darker mist. Sarah's pulse thundered. She recognized the handwriting, spidery, precise. The innkeeper, the one who had sealed the curse. Mike's voice was barely more than a breath. We have to call him. Sarah stepped forward. Innkeeper, I remember you. Silence. The leaf's glow faltered. The air chilled. Then a slow creak. A figure emerged from the shadow, tall and gaunt, eyes hollow beneath a wide-brimmed hat. His coat was long and dark, dripping with shadow. He lifted a bony finger. His voice, when it came, was a rasp. You dare remember me? Sarah's throat tightened. You brought this darkness here. You bound us. The innkeeper's lips curled. And I will not be freed so easily. Mike stepped beside her, voice firm. We've set them free. Now it's your turn. He laughed, a sound like wood cracking in a fire. The wallpaper rippled. The other names vanished. The walls shook. Sarah clutched the leaf and the shard in her pocket. She pressed the leaf against her heart and spoke, voice steady despite her fear. By leaf of blackened stone once torn, I call your soul to face its scorn. Your curse undone, your bond released. Return tonight, grant us peace. The leaf flared red-white, searing warmth into her chest. The shard in her pocket hummed. The innkeeper raised his hand, wind swirling. Shadows coalesced into tendrils that lashed toward Sarah and Mike. Mike shouted, Stand firm! Sarah's voice rose above the howl. No more hunger, no more pain. This night is ours! We break your chain! The leaf burst with light. The tendrils recoiled, shrieking. The innkeeper's form flickered, once, twice, then dissolved into a storm of ash. Silence. The mist of freed souls swirled around them. Margaret, the Harrows, all of them, whispering thanks as they drifted upward through the ceiling, out into the night sky. The black leaf fell from Sarah's hand, its glow fading to nothing. The shard lay cold in her pocket. The door to room 7 swung open. Moonlight spilled in. The corridor beyond was empty, normal. Mike exhaled, voice raw. It's done. Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. They're free, all of them. They stepped into the hallway. The inn behind them stood silent, its curse lifted at last. Outside, the wind sighed through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a door closed, gently, on a house no longer hungry for souls. They stepped into the night air, shoulders heavy with exhaustion, yet lightened by relief. The inn's porch light flickered once, then died. Sarah and Mike paused, listening to the hush of the woods. No whispers, no tapping, only the rustle of leaves. Mike swallowed. It's really over. Sarah nodded, breath visible in the cool air. She slipped the black leaf and the glass shard into her coat pocket. Let's get out of here before anything else happens. They walked back to the car in silence. The gravel crunched under their feet. Mike opened the driver's door, and Sarah slid into the passenger seat. He started the engine. The headlights illuminated the empty driveway. As they drove away, the inn receded into the darkness, a silent sentinel at last. Neither spoke until the road curved and the forest gave way to open fields. Mike exhaled. I can't believe we did it. Sarah stared ahead, heart still pounding. We did. We freed them. He glanced at her. Do you think the town will believe us? She shrugged. Probably not, but it doesn't matter. They're gone. They turned onto the highway. The rain began again. Light at first, then a steady patter on the windshield. Mike flicked on the wipers. Hours later, they arrived at Sarah's apartment. It was small and warm, everyday normal. Sarah flipped on the lights. The glow felt almost too bright after the inn's gloom. Mike leaned against the doorframe. So, what now? Sarah set her coat aside and emptied her pockets onto the coffee table. The black leaf lay curled and lifeless, the shard cold and inert. She studied them both, then closed her eyes. We bury them, he nodded. Good idea. They bundled up and drove to a wooded park on the edge of town. Under a canopy of oaks, they dug a shallow hole beneath a mossy stone. Sarah laid the leaf and shard inside, covered them with earth, and pressed down firmly. Goodbye, she whispered. A gust of wind stirred the branches overhead, but no voices answered, just the rustle of leaves. Back at the apartment, they made tea. The night stretched on, quiet, uneventful. Sarah felt the first genuine calm in days. She sipped her tea, watching steam spiral toward the ceiling. Mike yawned. I'm going to crash. Me too. Sarah led him to the spare couch. He curled up, camera tripod clutched in one arm, and fell asleep almost instantly. Alone in the living room, Sarah stared at her phone. No messages, no missed calls. She set it aside and climbed into bed. That night, sleep came easily until a soft tapping at her window awoke her. Her heart lurched. She sat up, listening. The tapping stopped. Silence pressed in. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and padded to the window. The city lights glowed beyond the glass. No shadows moved, no shapes stirred. She turned back and froze. On the dresser stood the black leaf, veins glowing faintly red. Her hand flew to her coat pocket. Empty. A whisper drifted from the corner of the room. Soon, Sarah's breath caught. The leaf on the dresser trembled, then dissolved into ash that drifted to the floor. The shard remained buried in the park. But the ash settled into a rune shape, one she recognized all too well. She backed away, heart pounding. The whisper came again, closer. I'm still here. Sarah swallowed. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She grabbed it. A new message, sender unknown. Thank you for remembering me. Her hands shook as she stared at the words. In the quiet room, the shadows pressed closer, waiting. And somewhere beyond her window, the wind carried a single chilling promise. Soon we will be free. Sarah's pulse thundered. She realized the battle might be won, but the war was far from over. Sarah stared at her phone, those 3 words burning on the screen. Thank you for remembering me. Her blood ran cold. The black leaf's ash on the dresser floor formed a rune she recognized, the symbol of binding. The presence was not grateful, it was taunting her. She swallowed, heart pounding. The war was not over. By first light, Sarah and Mike met at the city archives. Dusty tomes and brittle newspapers lay stacked on long tables. Sarah pulled out the faded pamphlet she'd found months ago, the original Maplewood Inn guest guide with a handwritten note in the margin. To bind the shadow, heart's blood, oak's root, moon's witness. Mike traced the words. Oak's root, the park. Sarah nodded. And the heart's blood, mine. Her palm stung at the memory of the ritual, but she knew what she had to do. That night, under a full moon, they returned to the park. The oak tree stood silent, with its gnarled roots sprawling like veins. Sarah carried a small vial of her own blood, collected earlier when Mike pricked her fingertip. She clutched the vial and the obelisk shard Mike had recovered from the basement rubble. They formed a circle of salt around the oak's roots. Mike lit 3 black candles, their flames flickering in the moonlight. Sarah knelt, pressing the shard against the earth. By heart's blood spilt in truth, by oak's deep root and moon's pale proof, I bind the shadow, nevermore, to haunt the night to cross this door. Her voice trembled, each word echoing through the silent park. She uncorked the vial, letting a drop of blood fall onto the shard, then smeared it across the room etched in its surface. The shard glowed faintly red. A wind rose, cold and sudden. The candle flame snapped upward. From the shadows beneath the oak, a figure emerged. The innkeeper, more solid now, rage burning in his hollow eyes. He advanced, tendrils of darkness swirling around him. You cannot bind me, his voice hissed, echoing in Sarah's mind. Sarah stood her ground. You're bound by memory, by sacrifice, by truth. Mike raised his camera tripod like a staff. Stand back. The innkeeper lunged. Sarah pressed the shard against his chest. The runes flared, sending a shockwave through the clearing. The oak's roots writhed, wrapping around the figure's ankles. The darkness screamed, an unholy sound that rattled their bones. By oak and blood and moon's own light, return to shadow, end this night. With a final cry, the innkeeper's form shattered into motes of ash, sucked into the roots, buried forever beneath the oak. The wind died. The candles guttered and went out. Silence. Sarah sank to her knees, breathless. Mike dropped beside her. Is it done? She nodded, tears in her eyes. He's gone. They stood and buried the shard and the ash beneath the roots, covering them with earth. Sarah pressed her palm against the bark, warm, living. Back at her apartment, Sarah placed a small oak sapling on her windowsill. She propagated it from a cutting of that ancient tree. Beside it, a single black candle, unlit, a reminder. That night, sleep came easily. No tapping, no whispers. At dawn, Sarah awoke to streaming through the glass. She sat up, heart calm. The sapling's new leaves glowed bright green. She smiled, relief washing over her. Mike stirred on the couch. Morning, morning, she whispered. She picked up her phone. No new messages, no unknown senders. She exhaled. It's finally over. Weeks later, Sarah returned to the archives to donate her research. The librarian smiled. You've done well. Sarah nodded. Thank you for remembering. Outside, the wind rustled through the oaks lining the street. Sarah paused, listening. No whispers, just the honest sigh of leaves. She walked on, sun at her back, ready for whatever came next.